Hi, my name is Ruth Knight, and today I just wanted to talk to you about humility, showing humility during conflict. When I work with a lot of teams, we often discuss conflict, and our conversations invariably end up talking about the role of humility when there's differences of opinion or when conflict arises within teams. It's quite funny to see people getting excited about humility, and really they understand the importance of humility within leadership and within teams. But it's very much easier to express humility and to be humble when things are going well. As soon as we start talking about conflict or when the teamwork is not going so well, people start getting awkward and uncomfortable then talking about humility. And the reason I think that is so is because when people are experiencing destructive conflict, they're often being fueled by pride. Pride is what makes people defensive, angry, fearful. It prevents people from having empathy with others, being open to feedback, saying sorry, and ultimately reconciliation. Humility is the most difficult thing to feel and express when we're having conflict with somebody else, because our pride can feel so battered and bruised that it takes all our energy and determination to stop and consider how the other person feels and what we might need to learn or be open to during this situation. Pride prevents us from putting other people's needs or ideas ahead of our own selfish interests. Humility means that we have to actively control our pride and show genuine empathy and concern for others, especially during times of conflict. There's an old proverb that I like, and it says, "Pride goes before destruction." Now, isn't that true? Especially when we're in conflict with others and pride surfaces and controls our conversations. It stops us from listening to the person or even thinking rationally. And of course, then conflict really leads to destruction and poor relationships. So instead of pride fueling our conflict, we need to let humility be the trait that we use to stay courteous, patient, forgiving, and open to feedback and new ideas. So let's just define humility. David Brooks, in his book called The Road to Character, says it very well. He says humility is the awareness that there's a lot you don't know, and that a lot of what you think you know is distorted and wrong. And I think this is very challenging because we need to always be aware that we don't have the right answers, or it might not be the right idea, or there might be a different way of looking at a situation or an issue. So humility is that awareness of saying, well, I might need to learn something. I might need to see something from a different perspective. So imagine if every time that you felt even the hint of a conflict starting, you quickly reminded yourself that this was an opportunity to learn something or see an issue from a different perspective. I think that this alone would really quickly change the conversation and prevent conflict from becoming worse or harming the relationship. So if we genuinely know that we've got lots to learn and we're willing to let other people inform us and teach us about themselves and life, even if we don't agree with their perspective, can you imagine how quickly humility can just become part of who we are in really every area of our life? So humility is the opposite of pride, and we have to let go of our pride to actually be genuinely empathic and concerned for others and their perspective and for what we need to learn. C.S. Lewis has a great quote that says, "Pride is a spiritual cancer. It eats up the very possibility of love or contentment or even common sense." and you probably know that this is true, that when pride is really fueling our emotions and our behavior, we really can't think straight. And of course, it leads to that destruction within our relationships. So C.S. Lewis says that a truly humble person doesn't go around thinking about humility and saying, how humble am I? Because that isn't very humble either. He really says that humility is just the way that we go thinking about others and thinking about relationships, because then we're open to just maintaining those relationships and thinking about how we can avoid conflict that's going to harm our teams or our leadership. So what are 3 things that we need to do to become more humble? Well, the first thing is to just seek to understand. If we're really trying to understand someone, we're going to be a lot more curious and not defensive. And we're going to be listening a lot more than jumping in and talking over the top of people, which is a really bad habit that we often get into, because it means that we're just trying to prove ourselves right, or we're trying to get our own point across, or we're trying to just make sure that we feel heard. And what that does then is it makes the other person feel not listened to, and it can make them defensive, and it's just a vicious cycle. So the first thing that we need to do then is to seek to understand and really open our minds to the possibility that we have something to learn, or we might not be right. The second thing is to empathize. So we need to not just listen to what others have to say, but we also have to show that we understand what they're saying. So empathy is being able to see the world as others see it. And we have to put our own perspective aside to try and see the problem or issue through the other person's eyes. And it might mean that you need to say something like, I'm really sorry, I know that's frustrating. Or I didn't know you felt like that. Thanks for being honest and letting me know. Or even you might want to let's try your idea first and see what we learn. So by putting our own pride aside and empathizing, it means that we can allow conflict to not destroy the relationship, but in actual fact do the opposite, to create deeper connections with people and allow us to have an understanding from other people about other people. And the third thing is to challenge our pride. So we've already discussed the fact that pride is at the center of destruction and relationship when they go wrong, when conflict occurs. So we need to not only be aware of that pride, but we need to then challenge it. And why this is so is because pride can dictate our emotions, our response, and our behavior. And we get so worried about being embarrassed or being vulnerable or being wrong. That's often, the biggest thing that we're worried about is that we don't challenge our pride. But author David Brooks says that defeating our weaknesses includes the ability to quiet ourselves and to mute the sound of our own egos. Only by quieting ourselves will we be open to the external forces that are waiting to help us. So isn't that amazing thought? That if we're able to really quiet ourselves and our pride and challenge it and say, hang on a minute, why am I feeling like this? If we can do that in the moment or just take some time to reflect, then it means that we're going to open ourselves to all sorts of new things that we need to learn and, of course, personal development. So the only way to de-escalate conflict is to challenge our pride and stop for long enough to realize how pride is getting in the way of forgiveness, relationships, connection, and teamwork. So in my conversations with teams, we usually explore the myth that humility is it's for people who are weak and unsure of themselves. But after discussing this myth, we agree that there's nothing further than the truth. There is nothing weak about humility at all. Humility requires curiosity, empathy, and honesty, and that all takes courage because we have to face and defeat our pride. Thank you for watching this tip for strong teams. If you would like to know any more about managing conflict, or perhaps you'd like to know more about creating high performance teams or developing your own teamwork skills, just subscribe to this channel, and I'd love you to leave me a comment, and then head over to the website strongteams.com.au. I'd really like to connect with you there.